forest. The cold was the only constant. Everything else, the shouting, the shelling, the chaos, came and went, but the cold stayed. It filled the air, the ground, the marrow in your bones. It chewed through every layer of wool and cloth like teeth. By dawn on December 17, the forest around Elsenborn Ridge had turned into a maze of trenches, foxholes, and frozen corpses. The sky hung low and gray, heavy with another storm. Every sound carried, the creak of a boot, the whisper of snow sliding off a branch, the distant guttural rattle of tank engines. We didn't talk much. Most of us just listened, waiting for it to start again. "Coffee's frozen solid," Benson muttered, shaking his tin cup. "Guess we're skipping breakfast." He tried to laugh, but his lips were cracked and bleeding from the wind. His gloves were stiff as boards. Mine weren't much better. We'd stopped feeling our fingers days ago. The lieutenant crawled over the lip of our foxhole, face caked with frost. "Listen up," he said softly. "Division's pulling back to better ground. We're staying put until they do. That means holding this ridge." "How long?" I asked. He shrugged. "Until the brass decides we've done enough dying for 1 week." He crawled off, leaving us with the wind. Mid-morning brought movement in the trees below, shapes gray against gray, shifting through the mist. Germans again, lots of them. You could tell by how organized they looked, even from a distance. They were probing our flanks, using the snow to muffle their approach. "Benson," I said quietly, "get on the BAR." He nodded and slid the weapon into position, eyes narrowed. The barrel glistened with frost. When the first bursts of fire came, they sounded distant, muffled by the snow. Then it all erupted at once, rifles, machine guns, grenades. The ridge exploded in light and smoke. For the next hour it was chaos. Germans pushing up the slope, yelling, firing from behind trees and logs. We answered with everything we had. The snow erupted around them in puffs of red mist. A mortar round landed close enough to fill my ears with a dull ringing. I remember the taste of blood and dirt, the smell of burned powder cutting through the cold. Benson fired until the barrel glowed orange. "They keep coming," he shouted. I leaned over the ridge, spotted a squad advancing in a tight line, and picked them off one by one until my clip ran dry. Somewhere down the slope, I saw one of ours get hit, spinning backward into the snow. I didn't even know his name. By afternoon, we'd repelled 3 separate assaults. The ridge was holding, barely. The medics moved from hole to hole, bandaging hands, checking pulses. One of them stopped at our position and grinned weakly. "They say Patton's boys are already on the move north," he said. 3 days, maybe 4, and we'll have armor behind us." 3 days, Benson repeated. "Might as well be 3 years. That night the snow turned to sleet. It hissed against the ground like boiling water. We huddled under our army blankets, knees drawn to our chests, rifles pressed between our boots to keep the bolts from freezing. Sleep was impossible. Every few minutes, someone fired a flare that turned the forest into a white hell of shadows and silhouettes. You'd see shapes flicker among the trees and wonder which ones would kill you by morning. Sometime after midnight, Benson nudged me. "You hear that?" At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I caught it. Faint voices carried on the cold air. German, whispered and hurried. They were close. We readied our rifles, hearts pounding. The sound came from the draw to our left, a shallow ravine filled with mist. Then came a crunch of frozen leaves, a barked order, a flash of light. "Grenade!" someone shouted. The explosion hit like a hammer. Dirt and snow rained down. My ears went dead again, silence roaring louder than noise. Benson grabbed my arm, pulling me deeper into the foxhole. "They're in the wire," he yelled. For 15 minutes, everything turned into a nightmare of muzzle flashes and shouts. Tracers carved red lines through the fog, cutting shadows in half. A German fell into our trench, bayonet ready, but I shot him before he landed. He crumpled at my feet, blood steaming in the cold air. When the firing finally stopped, the forest was quiet again, too quiet. We held. At dawn, the sky turned a faint gray blue. The ridge below us looked like something from another world. White snow streaked black with smoke, dotted with the still shapes of men who'd never move again. The pines stood stripped and splintered, sharp as spearheads against the horizon. Benson looked out, shoulders slumped. "All this for a hill," he said softly. "Just a damn hill. It's the hill that holds the road, I answered. He nodded, though I could tell he wasn't really listening. For 2 more days they hit us in waves, tanks, infantry, even artillery. The German gunners seemed to know exactly where every foxhole was. Each shell landed closer than the last. Men vanished mid-sentence. Others froze where they crouched, fingers locked around their rifles. Somewhere in there, the idea of victory stopped meaning anything. Surviving became the only thing that mattered. On the morning of December 20, the shelling stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The clouds broke open for a brief hour, letting sunlight spill across the snow. Steam rose from the wreckage like ghosts. Benson grinned faintly. "Maybe we beat 'em. Maybe they're just reloading," I said. But deep down, I knew something had changed. Word filtered through. American units were regrouping. The Germans were stalled. Our ridge had become the line they couldn't crack. That afternoon, we received new rations and actual hot soup, courtesy of a supply column that had finally broken through. It was thin potato broth, barely warm, but it tasted like something holy. One of the medics brought letters from the rear. Mine was from my sister back home in Ohio. She wrote about Christmas lights downtown, about ration stamps and snow that didn't smell like smoke. She said she missed me. I could barely read it through the haze in my eyes. Benson didn't get a letter. He just sat with his tin cup and said, "Bet it's warm there." Later that night, when the stars came out over the ridge, we both looked up at them for a long time. They were sharp and bright, cold as the air around us. I'd never seen a sky so clear. I wondered how many soldiers, on both sides, were staring at the same stars and praying for the same thing: warmth, home, peace. The next morning, the snow fell again, soft and silent, covering everything. The men laughed when the lieutenant said we were becoming legends. "Heroes of the Ridge," he called us, but heroes don't feel like this. Heroes don't shake when they try to light a cigarette or stare at the snow, because it reminds them of the friends buried beneath it. We were just men, cold and breathing and too stubborn to die. And as the German guns started again in the distance, echoing faintly through the trees, I tightened my grip on the rifle and whispered to the frozen air, "Still here."